On Appliance Warehouse proudly supports RSU TV and In the Kitchen with Friends. Our knowledgeable employees, interactive showrooms, and live displays are why we have so many loyal customers. Put that to the test, Oklahoma.
Thanks. We're back in the kitchen, and joining me now is Chef JV with Subculture. Tell us about Subculture. You have kind of an interesting job as a chef.
I do. We handle and produce a lot of shows, nightlife in Tulsa, Canes, BOK, IDL Ballroom. Any artists, musicians, celebrities that come in town, we either handle or produce the show, and it's really fun.
So you kind of have probably some strange requests you need to
I've had a lot of strange requests.
Accommodate.
One of my favorite, a lot of people hear about the M&Ms, but it is true. People have color phobias, and if they want all brown M&Ms, they can have them. If they want all blue, I guess I'll have to buy a lot of M&Ms to get them. But 5 pounds of gummy bears, I think, was the weirdest thing I've ever
request you've ever gotten. All right, so we don't have any gummy bears today.
No, we could.
But what are you going to prepare for our hosts?
Well, staying with the theme of pork, you guys have seen it done so many different ways. I just thought we'd do a take with a different sauce. A little Caribbean, Costa Rican. It's almost like a mole without the nuts in it. So, but it's a little chocolate, coffee, garlic,
chilies,
chili oil, cocoa, and some cinnamon. And you can either use it as a basting sauce, or you can finish and cook it, which I did, and put it on any sort of roasted cut, whether it's a butt, shoulder, or even pork loin.
Okay. So how do we start the sauce?
Well, we're going to go really easy. I like to usually use a little bit of a mixture of oil, chili oil and regular oil. If you like olive oil, if you like a little canola, you can. About
Ladies
2
and gentlemen,
tablespoons.
That is not Gatorade.
Yes. That's why it's
spicy.
it's got a little bit of color to it, but we did a mix, so it's not as strong. 2 tablespoons is enough to about I'd say a cup and a half of onions to get started. Now again, you can use whatever you want because of what type of onion. If you want it sweeter, a little bit bitter, if you like Vidalias. I'm partial to Vidalias. She knows that, but it's tough to get them, the real ones. Now they do have some fake ones, and I'm okay with those as well.
Sweeter onions, but they're not the true Vidalia.
And I like them. They're actually really good. And it really doesn't matter. I use a smaller chop because we're going to end up blending this eventually before we get done. The same thing. Let those go for about 2 to 4 minutes, and then usually I'll come in my root stuff. Ooh, let me get a serrano. Now, if you want, you can tell I'm from Oklahoma, serrano. If you want to, you can, not as hot, you can take out the seeds in it. I just usually put it in there and I pull it out.
Okay, so you're just going to season those onions and that oil up.
And because I'm going to puree this anyway. So the mixture, or spice mixture, is going to be 2 tablespoons of each, except the salt. That's going to be a teaspoon of garlic powder, cinnamon, coffee, cocoa, and some, I use some crystallized ginger. And that gives it a little bit more sweetness that we can put inside of it. And once you get it in here, it's going to be real aromatic and really kind of get going because it is strong.
It's pretty aromatic over here with that chili oil on that fire.
I know. Well, and then, you know, it is the mix. The color, I didn't want to use as much. But once we get it going, it kind of has this really dark, kind of roasted smell to it. We'll let that go for 4 minutes, and then we'll go to our next stuff, which is going to be, well, this is a pirate sauce. I guess is what I forgot to mention beforehand.
It's
got a little rum.
It's
got some sorghum instead of molasses. I love sorghum. And
he has rum. He's holding out on us, ladies.
Oh yeah. Well, I was gonna wait till the very end, but it's like this. Once we get that going for a little bit, our next is gonna be our wet stuff here. So let's see here. Put a little bit of butter. I say a little bit. No, not a ton.
A larger little bit.
And let's see. Here's this. I'm glad I put it in here because this stuff is just, you see what I'm working with here.
Wow.
So we'll get this going a little bit.
That'll.
And again, I stayed to make it easier. You can vary this however you would like, but 2 tablespoons of each and 2 teaspoons of the salt at the very end. And the same thing, I come in with a little bit of rum. I know. Now that's happened to me before. but now I don't have long hair, so it's okay. We'll get this going a little bit. Tell me, does this smell good at all?
It is smelling fantastic. And you know, this is kind of one of those dishes, like you said, it's mole-ish, but it doesn't require several hours and 42 seasonings.
Well,
This is
again,
a-
yeah, and my smallest mole is 22, I think.
So this is a nice, get a lot of that same
Yes.
richness without quite as much work.
Exactly. And it's, but it still has a little edge to it, so it will kind of finish a little warm.
That coffee
Say
smells
that.
really
Say
good.
that. But as far as like home dishes, most of the ones that I like are the ones that remind you of something you from back home. Maybe it was your mother or your aunt or even your grandmother. My grandmother really tried to keep me out of the kitchen as much as possible until I could actually prove I could cook something. And
Well, that's not a good idea.
no.
Teach
But
the kid to cook and you get the night off from making dinner.
Well, that's not how they thought of it. They just thought of get that boy out of the kitchen before he burns something.
Well,
Now-
you've actually got other professional kitchen types in your family.
We do. It starts out as a necessity because there's so many kids, and then it ends up being, who's going to cook this week and who's not going to cook this week. But I'm okay with all of those things. Now I've got a finish. We're going to let this go. It's, on each time, I say 2 to 4 minutes on each. So 3 different parts.
Addition.
And,
Each time
with
you're
the
adding
onions.
new ingredient. Cook that down. So the total simmer time on that is
About
what?
20 minutes.
20 minutes from start
And you
to
can
finish.
go longer depending on the heat. And a lot of times I'll save a little butter for the end just to get a little velvety just for the finish. And that's kind of the thing.
And then this right here has been through a blender.
Yes, it has.
Okay.
Now what we would do is take this right at the last 4 minutes after we put in the rum and coffee. And then we put that in like either a blender or a food processor. And then that kind of cooks down, and that's pretty self-explanatory. Now, if you want to baste it for basting, you'll want it to use that while it's cooking. But if you want to, you can finish cooking it down like I've done, and it's really good for an actual sauce. Some steamed rice. I've taken some pork butt and I've trimmed it down. I did a sear on the top of the stove just to get some color brown, and then I wrapped it. Put about 2 sliced Vidalia onions over the top, and then sealed it up and put it in the oven for about an hour and a half. That onion actually gives a lot more moisture inside of there, and it works.